Alright guys, welcome back to our series on building a drag and drop game with React, react-beautiful-dnd and ContextAPI. This is the part 7 of the series and it's brought to you by Concrete. Alright, so we've done some things in the previous videos in this series, and in the last video we've covered the basic setup of our Heroes game. Now let's continue on this. Basically, I will be going down into the code. Alright, so I'm going to be starting our React app right now. So npm start. We stopped at the point where we're trying to basically render this basic structure of the game. Alright, so it's time for us to literally start putting our heroes on the bench right here. But before we do that, basically let's I want to quickly do something. Now we are rendering columns on the page, right? We are rendering columns on the page and we want to render the bench differently when the index is 0, right? So basically what's going to happen is that as soon as it renders the first column, then it's going to render the second column as the bench, right? Now what we want to do is we want to turn this particular column component here to be a component for bench, and the reason is because we don't want to be able to drop anything on the bench column, right? And if we want to enable that, we are going to be adding a droppable to our column component. That means the bench is going to literally have an ability to be able to receive an item when you drop something on it. Though we can, naturally, we can just disable the drop, right, on that column, right? We can do that. Okay, maybe let's just do that. That would correlate with what we've done in our simple React task application. All right, so let's just do that. So what I want to do first is to let's get our list of heroes into this place. All right, so what we'll be doing right here is to do I'm just going to do, so for the column we are taking title. Let's go back to the column component right here. So we are taking title. Let's take in heroes, right? Heroes is going to be array of hide hero. That's what our heroes will be. So let's destructure that here. And what we want to do basically here is we want to, so for now I'm just going to be okay. So let's do this. Let's basically do this. So let's come here, let's pass in heroes here, and then it's going to be comic dot heroes. All right, and then for the heroes here, it's not supposed to be heroes. Actually, it's supposed to be list of heroes for the bench. All right, so but let's just pass in an empty array here first. All right, so an empty array, and then the error goes off. I'm going to reload this page. All right, so basically what we're going to be doing from here is to kind of render all the heroes. So in other words, what I want to do is to set up the bench. All right, so to set up the bench, I'm just going to say come here into our use effect. I'm going to do game context dot set bench. Then I'm going to do something like seed data. So I'm going to import that. VS Code is going to import that for me. Let me zoom in into my VS Code so you can see what I'm doing right here. So so seed data dot heroes. Okay, so once I do that, then for the heroes, for the column that renders the bench, for that heroes, I'm just going to be doing game context dot bench. I'm going to be putting the bench in here. All right, now if I begin to render anything here, it's going to affect all of the columns. right, it's going to affect all of the columns. So because we are using one single component. Okay, so let's get this done. So what we want to do here, what we want to do right here is we want to render our heroes. So we're going to say if heroes.length is greater than 0, then we want to do heroes.map, right? Heroes.map, we're going to say hero index, then we're going to actually return, let's just return a div class name, let's do hero item, let's do that, let's do div here. So we're returning a div, and in this div what we want to just render is hero.name. Okay, let's do hero.name. all right, let's reload this page. I don't know exactly why Typescript is putting that error on the screen. It's not supposed to be doing that. All right, so we are rendering the heroes for all column, but it's not showing for the bench. So there's something going on that is not right here. So let's check our components in the dev tools. I'm just going to go to game state here. For game state, I will be checking. So there's nothing on the bench actually. So there's nothing on the bench. So that means the set bench we did here is not really working. So let's check our context game state.tsx. Now we've not actually written anything here. All right. So what we want to do here, which is quite simple, is just to dispatch. We want to dispatch, and then we are going to say type is set bench. So we don't have set bench in our types file. All right, so let's go to types, and we're going to say, I'm just going to copy set seed and do set bench. All right, make sure that you write the proper thing. All right, that's very important. Then we're going to do set bench here. Then we're going to do payload is data. So any data that comes in here is the payload. All right, now after that we want to go to game reducer here to to have another case. We're going to have another case here, and then we're going to say it's set bench, and then it's going to set the bench, right? Remember, the variable you are assigning the payload to here must correspond to the variable you have defined in your initial state, in the state file for the context API, right? So bench here, and the game reducer bench here. That's very important. All right, so with that done, let's go back. Let's reload this page. Check our dev tools. Go to game state, and then you can see that the bench is populated. All right, so bench is also populated here, right? I don't know why this is actually having some issue here. So but it's not an issue actually. It's just that the margin bottom is not showing. So let's go to our CSS file, hero item, and we said hero list, hero item, margin bottom is 0.55 rem. Okay, I think it's because we've set a fixed height for this particular bench. For this particular column, or for all columns. That's why it's having an issue. So let's inspect. Let's check. We have wrapper, we have container, we have section, container, and then we have wrapper. And for wrapper, for inner box, we have padding. For the inner box here, we don't have padding. Okay, that makes sense. For wrapper, we say align items to center, and all right, if we remove that, we're still having the issue is still there. That's because we've set, it's probably because we've set a fixed height for the column. So let's check. The minimum height is 250 pixels. All right, that's the minimum height. So we're still having an issue. The inner box, let's check. The wrapper is inheriting the height from the container. Container is inheriting height from the section, and section is 100 VH. All right. So basically, let's go to custom CSS line 17. Line 17, I can press Ctrl G here. 17, and let's remove this first. Let's see what happens. Okay, now by removing that, automatically we are able to, have a proper height here. So we are supposed to set a minimum height instead of setting the height itself. All right, with this we have all this this arrows here. All right, now what we want to do very quickly is, I'm going to start closing some of these files. All right, so what we want to do very quickly is turn this particular div right here into a component. All right, so I'm just going to go down, duplicate my column, and then rename it to hero, right? Hero.tsx. All right, I'm just going to do that. Okay, just going to do hero here, and down. All right, so for hero, what is supposed to be here is the so we're supposed to have something like data is I hero. Our interface are supposed to have index, or does I hero have index? Does not have index. All right, so we're supposed to have index, and that's going to be number. All right, remember our each task component work in our task application, right? So we're going to have data here, and then we're going to have index. All right, with that done, what I want to do is just clear out everything I have here. Just clear it out, and I'm just going to copy what is in the column here, what I'm returning in this map. I'm going to copy and paste right here. All right, I'm going to paste right there, and then I'm going to delete this, and then I'm going to say hero, bring in my hero, and I'm going to put data is hero here, and we will have index to be index. All right, that makes sense. Let's go back to hero, and now we have whole heroes lined up here. So what we want to do is, let's begin to display their logos, right? The logo for each superhero movie, right? And their names. All right, so I'm going to do image img src and then alt here, right? All right, for the source for each hero, what we're going to do is we're going to start putting their images. All right, so we're going to dynamically render the images. So if you go back to your public folder, the images folder, by now you should have downloaded all of the images for all the superhero movies. Sorry about that. You should have downloaded all of the images, right? You can see the images are strategically named after the name of each hero. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so basically what we're going to be doing from here is we're going to be rendering the images, the images based on the names. Okay, so we're going to say the alt will be hero image, and then let's start. Let's just put the names. Okay, so let's just do P here, and let's add a simple style and say margin 0, 0, 0. Okay, we don't want any margin there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say data dot name. We're going to render the name, and now we have the hero image and each of the name of the name of each superhero. All right, so what I'm looking at here is because of the image that has not been rendered yet. So what we want to do is to properly render these images, right, based on the name of each superhero. Now that's what we want to do. Okay, so basically let's go back to our code and go back to our our hero component, right? And then let's start to render the images for each hero. All right, so to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to say what we want to do is we're going to use backticks here. Then first we're going to locate where the folder where the images are, right? Say images. So we will have 3 here. Going to be images. So it's inside the public folder, and then images folder, right? Images, then assets. Then we're going to do in assets. Then we're going to do hero dot name dot to lowercase. So you can see all of the name of the images are in lower cases. All right, so we're going to do to lower case, right? To lowercase dot replace, right? I'm going to do dot replace, right? Replace every space with an hyphen. That's what we want to do. Replace every space with an hyphen, right? So if the name of the hero, for example, let's check our seed data here, right? So if the name of the hero is Wonder Woman, right, there's a space between Wonder Woman, so we want to replace that space with an hyphen so that it can match the name of the image, which is Wonder-Woman here, right? That makes sense. So that's what we want to do, right? And once we are done, I'm just going to come outside of the curly brace and put .svg. Okay, svg. All right. So it's not supposed to be hero. It's supposed to be data. Sorry, data.name this and that. All right. So with that done, let's get back to our web page, and you can see all of the image are being rendered. So we need to style those images. So let's get back to CSS, custom.css, and then we'll say from our hero item. So we're going to say hero item img. We're going to say width is let's do 40 pixels first. 40 pixels is quite big, so let's do like 25 and 5 pixels. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then we are going to do hero item p, hero item p. So we're going to do for p, there's going to be let's say margin. Let's do margin left here. Let's do 1 rem. Let's see how that works. Okay, that's not working. Oh, it's rather pushing things. So let's do padding. Padding left is 1 rem. Okay, I think padding is okay. Now remember what we want to do, what we want to achieve here is we want to be able to drag the whole hero item here. All right, so we want to be able to drag the whole hero item. So let's change the padding for the hero item. Let's change it to 0.55 here, so it can be smaller. All right, now with this done, we've been able to render all the heroes, all our heroes, right? So the idea is to drag an hero, or to drag a hero from the bench to either of the sides of the bench, right? Either Marvel or DC, okay? Which makes a lot of sense. Okay, so what we want to do here next is, before we start adding the drag and drop functionality, we want to write a shuffle algorithm. Because what we want to happen is that every time you reload the page or every time you restart the game, we want to shuffle this list. Now, if I reload the page, the list is the same, starting from Superman and ending at Black Widow. We don't want that. We want a situation whereby, now it starts from Superman, ends at Black Widow, and then later it starts from Flash, ends at Thor, right? We want to keep shuffling every time you reload the page or every time you restart the game. So to achieve that, we are going to write a shuffle algorithm. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the code. We're going to go to helpers, under helpers folder in the game TSX file. We're going to write a shuffle algorithm here. All right. So let's do that. So we want to write an algorithm. It's called the North Shuffle algorithm. All right, so we're going to do the North Shuffle algorithm. All right, so it's something quite simple. All right, it's simple. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, let current list be equal to data. All right. Let current list be equal to data. So any array that is passed in, we save it in a temporary list, and then we say let current index be equal to data.length. That is the length of the array itself. All right. Now let's do let temp var be equal to, let it be any here, and let it be equal to empty object. So this will be a number, and then this will be an array of anything. Okay, right? Now let's say so I'm going to close my terminal here. So let me just open it. All right, that's fine. Let's random index. So let's do rand index equals let it be a number, let it be 0. Okay, now what we want to do is we're going to use while, right? So we're going to say while there remains elements in the array to shuffle, right? While there remains elements to array, I'm going to use the while loop. So while 0 is not equal to current index, right? Then what we want to do is this. We want to pick an element. So pick an element. So I'm going to say rand index equals math.floor. Math.floor, then we're going to say math.random multiplied by the current index. Now the current index is the length of the array. So let's change current index here to max. Actually, let's do constant max equals data.length. So we're going to do max, and then we're going to do max here. All right. By now you should know all these basic things in JavaScript, math.floor, math.random, what they do. So what we are doing is we are generating a random number. So let's say the length of the array is 10. We are telling JavaScript that we want to generate a random number between 0 and 10. JavaScript should not go beyond 10. That's why we are putting max here, right? So generate any random number between 0 and 10. All right. So with that done, we're then going to say decrease the current index, right? Let's turn this back to let instead of constant, because we can't change constant at runtime. So let's make it let here, let maxes. So we're going to decrease the current index. We're going to say max equals minus equal 1. So what this means is decrease or decrement. Yeah, less is decrement the current length. All right. So once you decrement, now what we want to do is, so pick an element, dot dot dot, then dot dot dot, and swap it with the current element, right? So how do we do that? We say temp val equals current list of max, right? Okay, I think it makes sense to name this as current index. Actually, it makes sense. So we are right the other time, so let's do current or current index. That makes sense. So the element at the current index, right? That's what we want to save into this temporary variable here, right? Remember, array is indexed from 0, but data.length here will give current index the length of the array, right? That is how many elements is within the array. So let's say there are 10 elements. Now, but if we want to actually get an element at a particular index, we need to index it. We need to reduce the length of the array. That is, so what I'm trying to say here is, if current index is 10, right? If current index is 10, and we know array is indexed from 0, it means we can't start getting elements within the array by using this index 10. So we have to turn it to 9, so that it can start from 0 down to 9, all right? Because array is indexed from 0. So that's why we need to decrement at this point. So if it is 10, it decrements to 9, and then it starts from 9. So that means most probably we'll be starting from the last element within the array. Okay, so with that done, then we say current list of current index is equal to current list of random index. Now remember, random index is 0 at this point. Okay, then we say current list of random index equal to temp val, right? Now with that done, so every time random index is generated, right? Every time a random number is generated, we are swapping the current element with with the element at that random index. So it will keep doing that until current index is probably 0, right? Once it is 0, the while loop will stop, right? And then we'll have the whole array reshuffled. So what we want to do here is to return current list. So we return current list. All right. Now with this, we can then go back to home. So I'm going to go back to home here. Now before we set the bench, what we want to do is we want to say game service dot shuffle. We want to call the shuffle function from our game service, and then want to pass in the list of heroes into the shuffle function. Then it's going to shuffle the whole array and return the whole array back to us, and then we set that to our bench. All right, now let's reload this page. Now you can see by default the list is starting from Spider-Man. Now you can see that it's starting from Green Lantern. If I reload this page again and reload again, you can see that it's starting from Thor, right? Green Lantern. So if you keep reloading, you see that the whole array or the whole list is being shuffled every time you reload. So the idea here is that we want to reshuffle the whole list of heroes every time you restart the game or every time you start a new game, right? Now with that done, we've achieved something. Now next is we want to start adding the drag and drop functionality. So you know how to do that already. So we are going to go into our column. So before we go into our column, let me just close up all this. Now let's go into our column. Let's do is drop. Let's do is drop here. It will be boolean, right? It will be boolean, and then we're going to do is drop here. Okay, so for our column we want only the there's okay, good. So we are going to do is drop is true, and then we're going to do is drop is false, because we don't want anybody to drop on the bench. All right, now with that done, we want only the hero list here. That's the only part where we want you to be able to drop something, right? That's the only part where we want you to be able to drop something. So basically, that's where we're going to be putting our droppable strict. All right. Now, let's import our droppable strict. Right. Let's import our droppable strict. So basically, I'm going to do import the slash. Let's do the slash droppable strict. So I think is this. Okay, now we're going to just do very simply, I'm going to just very simply do droppable strict. So take this here. Now remember the way this works. It requires a function, right? A function that starts and ends with parentheses, right? Remember the way this works. Okay, with that done, we are going to have provided and snapshot here. Okay, provided and snapshot, and we are going to add the provider. All right, so we're going to say so basically we're going to say in the div, we're going to say it's supposed to be provided dot placeholder. All right, so there's placeholder here. Now we want to we're supposed to add our droppable ID here. So droppable ID will be the column ID, right? So it will be the column ID. So basically, let's take in the ID of the column here. So we're going to do ID, that's going to be a string, and then we're going to destructure our ID here. All right, so that means we're going back here and we're putting the ID of the column. So we're going to say column comic. Let's do comic.id. all right, it's the comic actually. All right, so comic.id, ID here will just be bench. So we're going to say ID say bench. All right, so let's come back here. Let's put in our ID. All right, now we need to add some properties to this hero list here, right? Remember, first we have to put ref, and then ref is going to be provided dot inner ref here. All right, that's just that's constant. Then we're going to spread out provided dot droppable props. Now these two things are very important. Make sure they are very important. All right, then lastly we want to add we want to manipulate the class name here, so let's cut this out. Let's use a backticks. We've done this before, so I expect that now you know how it works. All right, so snapshot dot is dragging over. If it is true, then we want to act active here. If it is false, then we are adding nothing. All right, so that makes sense. I think we've set up our droppable we've set it up basically. Okay, so let's go back to custom.css here and let's look at our hero list. Okay, it has a minimum height of 250 pixels, and that makes a lot of sense. All right, so now let's go to our hero component, where we are going to be adding draggable to, we're going to be adding adding draggable to our hero component. All right, so let's get that done as soon as possible. So the whole thing has to be draggable. All right, so we're going to do import from react-beautiful-dnd. We want to import draggable, and then we're going to come here, draggable. So I'm going to just paste this right here. Don't forget it takes in a function. All right, makes sense. And then here we have provided snapshots. Okay, so for this we're going to have, so let's do key here. Let's do key. This requires key. Data.id is going to be the hero ID. Draggable ID also is going to be the hero ID. Data.id, and then index will be the index we're passing, right? Index into the props. Okay, with that done, let me just quickly do some little spacing here. With that done, also want to add ref. Ref is provided dot inner ref, and want to do provided dot draggable props. Supposed to be 3 dots here. It's supposed to be draggable props. Okay, then another one, provided dot drag and do props. All right, those 3 things are very important. Okay, now that we have all of that, I think we've been able to add draggable functionality to our hero and droppable functionality to our columns. All right, now what we want to do is drop disabled. For the column, we want to do is drop disabled. I want to write a logic here. I want to say if ID is equal to bench, then this should be, is drop should be here. If not, it should be false. All right, so which means whatever the value of is drop is, the ID. Okay, or we can just, let's not write any we can just put is drop here. All right, because in our home, if you notice, we've said for all other columns is drop should be true, and only for bench is drop should be false. Okay, right, so I'm going to come here and reload. Now we can drag, right? We can still drop here. So there's still a problem, and this is not highlightable yet. All right. So I don't know what's going on here. So we're going to try. We're going to try and actually we can't drop here, but it's going to have to go. It's going to have to go back to where it's coming from. All right. But let's actually write this logic. So if id is bench, right, let's put this drop here. For all others, let's put, so maybe we don't actually even need this. It's drop disabled if id is bench, and for all others, let's do this. And let's come here. We don't need this guy. Let's take this out. Let's take it out from our column too, so we don't have errors. Take it out from the column. All right, so everything looks cool. All right, good. Now I think the reason why it's not functioning the other time is because of that logic that we've not written. Okay, so let's quickly go back to custom.css and let's do our hero list should be height should be 100% by default. All right, so when I drag something here, now that height is shooting beyond the height of the column itself. So what we want to do is, let's do height is say 90% at least, at the least. All right, so if I drag something here, we have that. I think that's okay. So height is 90% for hero list. All right, now you can see it's dropping back. Now I can't drop here, right? That was what we were looking for the other time. So I'm not supposed to be able to drop here. Once I drag it out of the bench, I'm not supposed to be able to drop here. All right. But if I'm not able to drop this item anywhere, right, it's supposed to supposed to flow back to its original position, right? So for example, if I supposed to go back to its original position. Now let's deal with our dropping. So we've dealt with drag. Now let's deal with dropping. Okay. So so we're going to go back to home. We're going to start working on the undo drag function right here. So I think we already have some things going on. Okay, we already have some things going on from our task application. So we're just going to continue to work on it. Okay, now the first thing we want to do is let current list should be iSeed data, and let it be game context.seed. All right, now let's see what's going on here. Let's see the log. So I'm going to put this by the side. No, that's not going to work. All right, so let's put this here. Now if I drag and drop, I'm going to see source and destination being logged on my console. So the source is the bench, that's the droppable ID, you can see it here, and the destination is Marvel, that's the droppable ID. Both on the index is 0, right? That's the source index. Okay, now with that done, let's do our start. Our start is going to be current list dot comics. Yeah, it's supposed to be comics, right? Remember the column is also the comics. So current list dot comics, and this will be currently dot comics. Now another thing here is the destination, right? So what is the destination? Is comics. We've done this before, so It should be easy for you. Now, for the logic that does the replacement and all of that, so let's just comment this out for now. Let's comment, okay, so let's comment the first one out and let's uncomment the second one. Now for the item is going to be start dot, is going to be, so the start will always be the bench, right? Always, it will always be the bench, but you know, you can also drag from Marvel to DC and from DC to Marvel. Okay, so we can say start.column, start.heroes, and start.heroes here. All right, it returns back an index here. It returns back and the hero, or it could be undefined. So we want to say if the start.id is not equal to end.id, that is, if the source is different from the destination, then that's when we want to, you know, do the magic. So we're going to do start heroes here and end heroes. So it will be heroes, okay? Then start heroes, you know, splice out the item index and say heroes is for the remaining, right? So I've already explained this in previous videos in the series, so you can go back and watch what all of this means. So I'm just going to go ahead to do all of this. So this will be heroes and this will be heroes. All right, just follow what I'm doing. This would be comics and this will be comics. All right, and this will be game context dot set this and sets it, and it will be current list. All right, with that done, let's go back here, let's reload, let's do this. So drag, now it is supposed to stay, now it is not staying. So let's see, we want to understand what's going on. So for example, if I drag Batman here, it's not staying. So what I want to do, I want to check if it is if it's getting here. So we're going to say CLG got here. So let's see what's going on here. So it's not even getting to that point. Actually, it's not getting to that logic. Now that means there's something going on with our start and end. So let's log CLG start, CLG, that's console.log, end. Let's see what's going on. All right, so drag. So it's not even getting here at all. It's not even getting here. Let me reload this page just for check. It's not even getting to this point. So that means one way or the other there's no start and there's no end. All right, so let's take these two console log lines here, let's put it outside of the logic, and then we are supposed to be able to know what's going on from here. Now something is undefined, which is most probably the start. It is undefined. Okay, the start is undefined, and the reason why the start is undefined is because it's not necessarily the bench, right? So that means we have to equate our start to the bench. We have to equate our start to the bench. All right, so start here would be to be something like this, game context dot bench. All right, so it can't find the bench, and this will be an array of I hero. Now with that done, then we can do, instead of start dot heroes here, we can do start dot, to find the item, we can do that. So basically, now instead of finding the item from the bench, let's find the item from the seed data itself, right? Because sometimes we would have dragged some item out of the bench, and it will be in either Marvel or DC, right? And we want to drag from Marvel to DC. So we don't have to find that item. At that point, that item is not present on the bench. So let's do current list dot heroes, right? I think this will make a lot of sense for us, right? So let's find the item from the list of heroes of the original data itself, and that will make a lot of sense for us. All right. So now, with that done, let's go back here. Right, let's go back here. So we are going to be testing something else here, not the start and end ID. So we are going to be doing, we're going to be testing the source and the destination ID. So we are going to say if source dot droppable ID, right? Droppable ID is not equal to destination dot droppable ID. That will mean that the source and the destination is not equal. So I'm not going to reorder at that point. So I find the item. So we've already find the item. Now, what we want to do basically is to check if the item is currently existing in the destination. All right, if it's currently existing in the destination, so we're going to say constant exist equals end dot heroes. I'm going to say x sorry dot find. I'm going to say end dot heroes dot find x dot, I'm going to say x dot id if it's the same thing as item dot id. Remember, item is what is being dragged, right? So let's even name this hero instead. Hero index, right? And then we're going to do hero and hero index here. All right, so we're going to do if the hero is existing, if the hero is existing in this destination, we don't want to do anything. All right, but if it is not existing, that is if not exist, that's when we want to do the magic, right? That's when we want to do the magic. So we're going to do cut all of this out, right? Let's cut all of that out. Now we want to say let start heroes. So this is just going to be let start heroes is equals to start, and let end heroes is end dot heroes, and we're going to say start heroes hero index, remove it from the bench. Remember, start here is the bench, right? And then we are going to say start equals start heroes, right? What's this? So in saying start is any, yeah, that's not supposed to be high hero. Okay, because start is a constant. That's why, because start is a constant. So let's say let's start here. Let's do let's start. So that's not going to give us any issue. All right. Right now, let's do end dot heroes dot push hero. We're going to push hero here, and we're going to say end dot heroes equals to end heroes. And then there are two different things we want to do here, right? We want to set bench to start. So let's do current list dot comics. Then we are going to do, let's remove this. So we add the end comic, which is the end column, to the current list with splice. And then this time around, we're going to do, instead of doing game context set seed current list alone, we're going to do game context dot set bench this time around to start. All right. So what we do is that we've removed the item from the from the bench, and then we set the remaining set of items to the bench back again. And then that item we removed from the bench, we add it to the destination column, right? Destination could be Marvel or DC at this point. All right, let's see how this works. So I drag here, it stays. When it stays, it has been removed from the bench. So what I want to do is let's clear all the console logs except the source and the destination, except for the source and destination. All right. We are still doing console log somewhere. Where is that? Okay, I'm not sure. Let's clear all the console logs and then let's close the dev tools. So I'm going to drag Superman here, Captain America here, right? So as we are dragging, the height of the column is being reduced. That's number one. And then what do you call it? Each item is staying where we are dragging them. All right. So now what we want is that the height of the column is not being reduced. The height of the column is static, right? The height of the column is static, basically. So now, for us to do that, what we are going to do is we are going to reload this page. We are going to check the height. The current height of hero list here is like 622 pixels. Okay. So let's go to custom.css. So hero list here, minimum height will be 250 pixels. Height, let's do height will be say 624 pixels. Let's do that. So every time, so let's do this. You can see that the height is not reducing anymore because we've given it a fixed height. All right, if we give it a flexible height, the height will be reducing, and we don't want the height to reduce. We want the height to stay exactly the way it is. Okay, so now we've been able to achieve drag and drop. Now let's quickly achieve reordering. All right, so currently we are not reordering. Let's do our reorder. So let's go back to home. This time around we are going to be doing this. So if source and droppable ID, if source and destination droppable ID are the same, if they are equal, and hero is also equal, now what we want to do is very simple here. What we want to do is very simple, right? So that means we can make use of our end here, because if source and destination is equal, sorry, that means end is the same as start, right? So we can do start, we can do hero list is end dot heroes, right? Then we are going to do repositioning. So hero list, we don't have the reposition function yet, so but let's put hero list, source index, destination index. Then you remember what we have to do is to just do game service dot reposition, right? So I'm just going to paste it here. So it's going to do the repositioning, and then we are going to do end dot heroes equals the result. Then we say current list dot comics, splice the end index is supposed to be EIndex, then splice it with the updated end, and then game context dot set seed is current list. All right, so now we are going to be able to reorder. All right, so let's reload. I'm going to just drag a couple of superhero movies here. Then I want to take Flash to the second position. Now it's not staying, okay? It's not staying, and that's an issue. So let's look at what we have here. All right, let's look at what we have here. So here I'm going to just log. I'm going to say clg end dot heroes. So let's reload this page, open our DevTools and drag. Now it's not getting there at all. All right, that's another thing again. It's not getting there at all. All right, so why is it not getting there? So we're saying source and destination. So droppable ID for destination is DC. Droppable ID for destination, for source, is bench, and that's a problem. So what we need to do is we need to say if source droppable ID, right, is either of DC or Marvel. All right, so we want to say, let's do if the source, because we are concerned about the source here, if source.droppable ID is equal to I want to say game service dot comics dot Marvel dot to lowercase, right, or source dot droppable ID equals game service dot comics dot DC dot to lowercase, right? So what we are saying is, if you are on either Marvel or DC, and you are dragging and you are dropping on the same, right? Now remember, if the source droppable ID is equal to any of this, right, and if the destination, right, if the destination is any of the two, right, so we can test if the destination is any of the two, okay, but we don't want to do that. So let's see what happens here. So now source droppable ID is bench, so it's not going to work. It's going to execute the other logic, right? Going to execute the other logic. But if I drag within Marvel list here, what happens? Source droppable ID is Marvel, destination droppable ID is Marvel. Okay. Okay, maybe what we need to do is not okay. I think it's working now, right? It's working. So if both droppable ID are the same, so why is it not working the other time? Let's try that logic again. If source, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just copy this, just copy it, and then I'm going to do destination dot droppable ID. So let's see what happens here. Don't know why. Spider-Man, Superman, go up, go. Wow, it's working. So the question is, why was it not working the other time? It's working now, so I can reorder in the same list. All right, that makes a lot of sense. Now, what have we achieved so far? We've been able to, let me reload. We've been able to drag on either sides of the bench. That is, drag the superhero movie that belongs to its maker, either DC or Marvel. All right. Now, while you are on DC or Marvel, you can also reorder and say, oh, I want to rearrange this thing in alphabetical order. So B first, C then goes, G then goes, and then S goes. All right. So for this, it is going to be, I think H first, I next, S, and then T. All right. Now, what we want to achieve here is when you drag the correct superhero movie to its correct company or its correct studio, you have 12 points. Now, when you reorder in alphabetical order correctly within the time frame, you also have additional points. And when the time is what do you call it? When the time is actually, you didn't use up all your time, right? You have additional points. So these are the 3 ways we want to, reward you. All right. So with that done, let's begin to write the logic that helps us to, calculate the score, right? So let's begin to do that. Logic that will help us to calculate the score. All right. Now, to be able to do that, what we want to do currently is we want to go back to the code and go to our game service here. And then we want to start writing in calculate score. All right. We want to start writing the code. Okay. So now, let's go to game service. Let's go to calculate score function. All right. So in calculate score, we want to do a couple of things. All right. So now, the first set of things I want to do here are quite different because we are going to be writing a couple of functions here, like a couple of functions. All right. Now, the first thing we want to do is how do we get groups? Like, how does this group thing work, right? How do we group first? Now, but let's go on. So we'll say constant max point equals data dot length. Now remember, the data here is the number of heroes, the number of superhero movies that you've dragged to a particular studio. All right. So if you've dragged 4 to Marvel, that will be the data here. That will be the array we are considering here, right? Okay, great. Because we are going to calculate the score for each of the column, right? All right. So with that, then we are going to say, okay, we're going to say let DC sum be equal to 0. That is, this will be the sum of all points you have for the DC column. All right, sorry, this should be number. And then let, let's call it MV sum, right? For Marvel, let it be 0. Now, what we want to do is we want to get the original list, right? So we want to say get the original lists. So we're going to say let DC lists is equal to data dot filter, right? Data dot filter. Then we're going to do we're going to do x dot comics. Sorry, remember every hero has a comic. If it is equal to comics dot DC dot to lowercase, that is whatever data that was passed in here. Want to filter out all the list of DC heroes you've dragged and all the list of Marvel you've dragged. We want to separate the two. Okay, that's what we're trying to do here. So we're going to do mv list, and this is going to be comics.marvel. So we've gotten your DC list and your Marvel list. Now, what do we want to do with the two? We want to do some calculation. All right. So we're going to say groups. Now remember that our group interface has a DC list and a Marvel list of heroes, right? So we're going to say groups.dc.map, right? Groups.dc.map. So we're going to have hero index. Then we're going to perform some logic here. So first, we want to check, right? We want to check if the hero you have in your own DC list, right? If it is in the groups DC list. Now, I will show you how we'll get all the groups later, right? So we want to say constant exist equals DC list dot find. DC list dot find. This will be x, right? We're saying x dot id if the id is the same thing as the hero id, right? And remember, x dot comic is the same thing as hero dot comic. Now we don't just want to find the id. We want to make sure that the hero is in this particular list, right? That means the id of the hero and your own list, the id of the two heroes has to be the same. Their comic has to be the same, right? Now, if that is the case and there is exist, so we're going to say if exists, then what we want to do is we want to do constant hero index. That's h index is hero index. We want to find the hero index. All right, so let me just put some comments here. So we want to find the hero index from alphabetical sorting. From alphabetical sorting. So what we want to do is we want to sort the whole hero list, right? And then find the index, right? From your own list. From your own list, we want to find want to sort the whole hero list and find the index. So what we are trying to do is your own list. If your own list is Black Widow, Captain America, and Green Lantern, and all of that, first we want to check if all of these things, all of the heroes you've dragged here, is actually in the original comic list, right? That's number one. If it exists, then we want to check in the original comic list, if the index, remember the index here is 0, the index here is 1. So if the index are the same, that means that would have meant that you have dragged the correct hero to the correct studio, and then you have also sorted it in alphabetical order, right? That's what we are trying to do, basically. So we want to find the hero index from from alphabetical sorting. And that's number one. Number two, we want to calculate penalty. I want to calculate penalty, right? And then we want to calculate sum, right? We want to calculate sum. Now, else, what we want to do is mv sum. Yeah, let's just quickly do this. Mv sum is mv sum. Sorry, it's supposed to be dc sum because this is for dc. Remember, this groups is for dc. So dc sum equals dc sum plus 0. Okay, great. So now what we want to do is how do we sort, how do we do this sorting, this alphabetical sorting? So that means, remember there's a function here called sort heroes, just above the calculate score. So basically, let's write the function to sort, to sort the list. So we are going to be sorting the list from the original, our seed data. That's what we are going to be sorting, basically. So, but we are going to be working with a parameter put here. So we are going to say let order equals data.sort. We're going to be using the sorry for the sound. There's a sound in the background. Just sorry for that. Basically, what we want to do is we're going to be using the sort function of an array to do this sorting. So we're going to sort. We're going to put in a compare function here. We're going to say a comma b. All right. Now, what we want to do is if a dot name is less than b.name, then what we want to do is we want to say return -1, right? Then we want to do else if a.name is greater than b.name, right? Then what we want to do is we want to say return 1. Now I'm going to explain what this means to you. Now else, what we want to do is return 0, right? And once we are done, we are going to return order instead of data. We're going to return order. So how does array sorting works? So let's go back here. Let's go to devdocs.io. devdocs.io. Let's quickly check JavaScript, array, and let's find sort. Array.sort. How does this work? Now the sort method sorts the element of an array in place, right? That's what it does. Basically, let's check the compare function. That's what we are looking for. Now, for compare function specifies a function that defines the sort order. If omitted, the array elements are converted to strings and then sorted according to each character's Unicode, right? Now, this is not what we are looking for. Okay, great. This is what we are looking for. Now, greater than 0 means sort A after B. Less than 0 means sort A before B, right? And equal to 0 means keep the original order. Now, see what we are doing here. What we are doing is, remember greater than 0. 1 is greater than 0 means sort A after B. That is, you put the B element before A, right? Then, if it is less than 1, if we are returning less than 1 here, if we are returning a negative number, it means sort A before B. That is, put the element for A before the element for B, right? And then, if you are returning 0, if you are returning exactly 0, just keep the original order. So what we are saying is that based on the name of each heroes, right, or each superhero movie, based on their name, right? If, for example, if we have C, if A's name is starts with C, right, and B's name starts with D, right? In this case, C is supposed to come before D, right? So this is what will be executed, right? Because the sorting function of an array says that if A is greater than B, that is, if you should return a positive number, you should sort A before B. You should sort A after B. So this is not what is going to be executed in this case. This is what will be executed. All right. So A comes before B when you return a negative number. So, but if reverse is the case here, if B's name is starting with C and A's name is starting with D, then this is what will be executed, right? So in essence, if you want A to be sorted before B, then you return a negative number. If you want B to be sorted before A, you return a positive number. And if you want to keep the original order, return 0. That's how sort works here. So this sort function is going to actually, sort the whole original data for us, right? Now, with that done, I can go back to calculate score and then, automatically sort. So what I want to do here is I want to sort to find the index of the array, of the hero. I want to, actually sort the heroes. So I'm going to do constant h index, that is hero index here. Then I'll do sort heroes. I'll do sort heroes data, that is whatever data that is passed in here, sort them in alphabetical order, then dot find index of x, right? X dot id, then I'll do equals hero dot id. So I'm comparing it to the original data that is within our seed data, right? That's what is within this DC. So every hero that is connected to DC will be inside this DC array here. All right, so that's what I'm comparing it to. Now, what do I want to do? To calculate the penalty, I'm going to say constant penalty equals if h index is the same as index, right? If it's the same as index. So I'm sorting your own list and comparing it with the original list, right? So if the index are the same, this is the index of the original list, this is the index of your own list. If the index are the same, then I'm going to do max point. I'm going to return max point here, right? If not, if the index are not the same, then I want to remove from your max point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say max point minus index minus h index. So what's going to happen is that, let's say your own index here is, the index here is 1, and the h index here is like, say, 3. So it's going to do 1 minus 3 here. That's minus 2, right? Then it's going to do max point. Our max point is always 12, right? Remember, we set our max point to, the data that you pass in, basically, right? So it's going to do the max point, the length, says, let's say it's 12 or 10 or something, minus whatever this results to. That will be your penalty, right? And this is because you didn't sort it in alphabetical order, right? If you sort it in alphabetical order, you get the maximum point. If you did not sort it in alphabetical order, that is, if these two indexes are not the same, then we are going to deduct from your point, all right? So, and then we're going to say DC sum equals DC sum plus penalty, right? Remember, we are doing a map here. So it's going to execute this logic for each item or each hero in the DC array here. It's going to execute this logic for each of them. So this means that for each of the superhero you drag to either side of the bench here, it's going to be calculating the points, right? So if you get 12 here and 12 here, that's 24 plus another 12. That's how it's going to do. And then it's going to calculate the sum for all of them, right? Now, what I want to quickly do here is the same thing that goes for Marvel. The same thing goes for Marvel. The only thing I have to change here is groups.marvel. And it's the same thing for Marvel too, all right? And instead of DC sum here, I'm going to be doing MV sum, right? And with that done, what I want to do is whatever point you have for DC and whatever point you have for Marvel, I'm going to return it. So I'm going to say return, your points will now be MV sum plus DC sum. All right, that will be your total point. So this way we've been able to calculate the whole score. And now what we want to do basically is to calculate the total score, because we are not necessarily going to be calling this function all the time. We're probably going to be calling this total score function all the time because we want to calculate your total score. That's what we want to do. Now, for the total score to work, what we want to do is we want to say constant score equals calculate score data, right? We'll pass in the data. What do we need? We'll pass in the groups, right? Remember, we are taking data and groups here, and then we'll pass in so when we get your score, now what we want to do is that we want to say so constant total. I want to say constant total is score. If score is available, that is, if it is greater than 0, we want to return your score. Score plus time. And then if score is not available, we just want to return 0. Then here we are going to return total. Now what this means here is that for time, so if the time, if let's say you have 30 seconds to play, you finish everything correctly in just 25 seconds, right? The remaining seconds, which is 5, we are going to pass it in here in this total score. So whatever your score is plus 5, which is the remaining seconds that you didn't use up, that will be your final score at the end of the day. All right, so that's what we are returning back. Now with that done, now let's talk about get group, right? Or what does how will getting group, how will it work? So what we want to do here is very simple. We want to say constant DC comic will be equal to data dot find x, and then let me close this bracket, and then it will be x dot comic, is array of comic. So I want to say x dot id equal to comics dot dc dot to lowercase, right? So we are pulling out everything that has to do with the DC comic, right? So and then again we are doing constant DC mv comic equals, so I'm just going to copy this logic here and then going to paste it here, and then instead of comic.dc I'm going to do comic.marvel. all right, so we have separate list for separate comic for DC comic, and so let's do iComic here. All right, that's what it's supposed to return anyway. So why is it complaining? Oh, iComic undefined. All right, let's remove it. Now what we want to do is we want to say if DC comic, then we want to go and say result.dc. remember, we've already defined result here, result.dc. now what we want to pull out is the heroes. That's all. That's what we want to pull out, dot heroes, basically. Because if you look at our interface in types, group is array of I hero. All right, that's what we want to pull out. So we'll say if mv comic, then we say result dot marvel equals mv comic dot heroes. So with that done, this is what our get group function will be doing basically. Now we have two functions left. Now we want to calculate your time left and your and also we want to get seconds from your time left basically, right? I'm not sure we are going to be using this get seconds mostly, but let's do for time left first. So what we are going to be doing is we say let r, which is a number, let it be equal to d divided by 1000. All right, I'm going to show you how this is going to function in our project. All right, so we've done a lot, literally done a lot basically. So now let's start using these functions so we can see how it really works. All right, how it really works. So let's go back to our home.tsx and let's begin to explore, right? So in home, the first thing we want to do is let's quickly check how we will use this calculate score function. Let's quickly check how that will work. All right, so what we want to do is when you drag and you drop, right? When you drag and you drop, we want to do calculation, but wait, that should not be the case. That should not be the case. It is when the time is up. That's when we want to really and basically that's where we want to really calculate your total score, right? So let's start writing some functions in the home page. On our home page. So let's do constant start game. So let's start game. Let's write a function to start the game. All right, so to start the game, what we want to do is we want to do get game context dot set game state. Set game state to playing. So when you start a game, we want to set the game state to playing. So we're going to say game service dot game state dot playing. All right, now with that, what we also want to do is we want to say game context dot set bench, and then we're going to say game service dot shuffle, then we're going to say seed data dot heroes. All right, so what we're basically doing in use effect, we're now going to be doing it in the function start game. So we're going to take it away from the use effect. All right, then next we want to say game context dot set duration. I want to set the duration to like say 30 seconds. Okay, now we are going to now trigger a function that we are going to call loop trigger. So we're going to say trigger game loop. So what does game loop mean? So let's do constant game loop equals. So what we want to use game loop to do is to do something around countdown, like a countdown stuff, right? So we're going to say duration is number. So every time you call this function, so I'll call the function here, I'll say game loop, and then I'll pass game service dot game state dot duration. Remember, in our game service, we've already set the duration to 30 seconds. All right, so that makes sense. Okay, so for game loop, what we want to do is we want to use set interval. We want to use set interval to do our countdown, our time countdown. So we're going to do let timer be equal to set interval, or we can't get that straight. Let's do window.set interval. Then for this, I am going to do 1000 here. 1000 means 1 second, right? 1000 milliseconds makes 1 second. All right, so I'm going to do clear out, clear interval timer. I'm going to do clear timeout timer. Those two things are very important, so that we can clear the interval, so that it won't keep running in our web browser or in our application, right? We are going to have to trigger a function here. Trigger, I'm going to say, okay, before we start doing all this, what we want to do is if duration, I want to say if duration is equal to -1, right? Equal to -1. Sorry, that's when we want to. That is, if it's less than 0, right? Then clear the timeout and then trigger the end game. Trigger the end game function. So we want to automatically end the game, right? So when the timer has counted down to 0, we want to end the game, and we want to automatically end the game, right? But if that's not the case, if it's greater than greater than -1 or is equal to 0, right? What we want to do is we want to say get game context.set duration. We want to set that to duration, right? And then we're going to do game context.set timer. We want to set that to our timer. All right, remember we have a couple of things we are doing here. We have a couple of functions we've already written in our context API. So basically, I'm going to do duration. I'm going to do decrement here. I'm going to decrement duration. So if you put double minus symbols here, it means it should decrement the duration by 1. Remember, duration is 30, right? So it will keep decrementing by 1. So it will go 29, 28, right? That's the way it works. All right, now with that done, let's quickly go to our game state here in our context API. Or we need to quickly write some functions. It's very important that we write these functions. So we need to quickly write some functions in our game state. So let's go that. So the timer and the duration and the game state, we've not written anything in those functions. So we need to quickly do that. So I'll start with the timer first, just to quickly. So what we want to do is we want to dispatch here. We want to dispatch. Basically, that's what we want to do. So it says type set duration, and then we're going to do payload. Payload is what's coming in T, right? And I'm going to copy this. I'm going to do the same thing for duration here. Oh, sorry. This should be set timer, not duration. And this should be duration. And this should be D. And then for game state, it's going to be set game state. And then this is going to be S. All right. We've already defined all the set game state, set duration, and set timer. We've defined that earlier. All right. With that done, I guess we are done with our game state here. Let's go to our game reducer to to put all of those things there. So we're going to say set timer. Then this will be timer. Right. Remember this variable right here, or this particular variable right here, has to match your initial state variable here. So we have game state, timer, and duration. All right. So I'm going to do for game state, set game state, say game state. And then lastly, for duration, set duration. Say duration. All right, with that done, I guess we are pretty much done with our context. I'm not sure there's anything we want to come and do here anymore. There's really nothing. Okay, now let's go back to our game loop. See what happens here. When the timer counts down to 0, we clear out the interval and clear out the timer altogether, and we trigger a end game function. But if that's not the case, if it's still counting down, we want to set the duration all the time, and we want to also set the timer of our context API, right? That's what game loop does for us here. So every time we start the game, it's going to trigger the timer to start working automatically. Now let's quickly write our end game function, right? So let's write our end game function. So that will be constant end game. That's equal to it's going to take a parameter n here. Then now every time we end the game, we want to do what? We want to calculate the total score for the player. Every single time we end the game, we want to calculate the total score for the player, right? This is the reason why we need to take the remaining number of time that is available as the parameter. All right, so what we want to do first what we want to do is we want to clear out the timer, because we are going to be passing the timer in the game, right? So we want to clear interval. So we're going to do T, yeah. So we clear that out. Then we set the game state. Set game state. We set the game state to done, because every time you end the game is done. All right. So game context dot set game state to game service dot game state dot done. All right. Right. Now we want to do what? We want to calculate score automatically. So we say constant score equals game service dot total score, right? Remember this total score from our game service, right? Then we are going to say game context dot seed dot heroes. So we pass in the original list of heroes, right? Then also we say game context, this time around is game service dot get group, right? Then we say game context dot seed dot comics, right? So what we want to do is that you get the groups from the original data of comics, get the heroes from the original data of heroes, right? And lastly, we're going to say game context dot duration. That will be the time. All right. So with that, it's going to calculate the score. Let's go back to total score here, right? Not here actually. Let's go back to total score in our game service. So for total score, it takes the array of heroes, which is coming from our original heroes, the groups, which is coming from our original comics, original list of comics, and then the time left, right? And remember that that time left is coming as a parameter in the end game function here. And this end game function is supposed to be called within our game loop function. So let's call the function here. So we say end game timer, right? So whatever time is left, we're going to find it here. We're going to pass it into the end game, and that's what the end game is going to use to calculate the total score. All right, so once we are done, we want to create a state here at the top. We say constant, say game score, set game score. That will be equal to use state. I'm going to put this as number, and it's going to be 0 by default. Okay, so that here I can come here and then in our end game function I can then say set game score to score. All right, so whatever the total score is, it's going to calculate, it's going to set it to our state, and that's everything about the end game function, the game loop function, and the start game function. All right, so we have those three important functions. Now let's also write another. We are also going to write two other functions. We're going to say constant reset game. That's going to be reset the game. So reset game is not going to be taking any parameter. We're just going to be clicking a button that will reset the game. So what do we want to do with this reset game? First, we want to say let current list equals game context. Let me just be sure everything is so game context dot seed, right? Game context dot seed, right? So I'll say let clist equals current list dot comics. Okay, then I'll say clist equals clist dot map, then x, and then I want to return id is x.id. I'm returning name is x.name, then heroes is empty. So what I want to do is I want to reset the seed data. Every time you reset game, I want to reset the seed data, right? I want to make sure that the heroes of all the comics in the seed data is empty. That's why we are doing this. All right, so then we're going to say current list dot comics equals clist, not cluster, is clist. All right, so with that done, then I'm going to set state. So I'm going to say set states. So game context dot set seed first. I want to do that's current lists. Then game context dot set bench. I also want to set the bench to be empty, right? Until you click, when you reset game, you have to start the game so that the bench will be filled up. So I'll empty the bench. When you reset the game, I'll empty the bench. So everything is empty. Every other thing is empty. All right. So game context dot set timer. So timer here will be 0, right? Game context dot, you see the usefulness of all these functions now, right? Set duration, it will be 0, right? Game context dot set game state. So we set game state to ready, right? So game dot game state. So it's supposed to be game service, right? Game service dot game state dot ready. All right, makes sense. Now, this reset game is like you are resetting factory settings. All right, that's what this means. Okay, so you are basically resetting everything back to their normal states when you are not necessarily playing a game. Now, another function we want to write is we want to say handle start. We want to do handle start, right? So we're going to put an event here, and then what we want to do right here is we want to say, okay, if the event is existing, if the event is available, we want to do events.prevent default right? Next, we want to say if game context dot game state is equal to game service, right, dot game state dot ready, right? If it's ready, then we want to trigger a function called start game, right? So if the game state is ready, start the game. If the game state is not ready, that is else. If, so we're going to do else if here. Just going to copy that and paste. If game context of game state is done, if it is done, if the game state is done, we want to reset the game, right? If the game state is already done, then we want to reset the game. If the game state is ready, then we want to start the game, right? And if the game state is playing, that is you are currently playing, right? Then what we want to do, if this is playing, then what we want to do is to end the game. End game. Then we say game context dot timer. End the game with the timer. All right. With that done, we now have an overall function, or sorry, a overall function. Sorry, a overall function that will, either resets the game, or starts the game, or ends the game for us. All right. Okay, so what we want to do right here now is, in the info box right here, we want to start writing some logic here. Yeah, we want to start writing doing some HTML stuff here. Right. Okay, so basically, what we want to do is, we want to do this. Let's do this. So let's say div class name wrap box. Div class name wrap box. Now for the wrap box, what I want to do is, I know we've not checked our web page for a long time. Let's reload here. Reload, you see that the bench is empty. The bench is empty because we've not started the game. All right. So now let's just continue. Let's continue. Basically, let's continue what we are doing. All right. So we're going to put h1 here. We're going to say, there's no class name yet. We want to put a logic. We're going to say game context dot game state is equal to game service dot game state dot playing. If you are playing the game currently, we want to do now playing, right? Else, right? Else, we want to put some text there. We want to put some text there. So, so we want to say line up heroes. That's the name of the game. All right. Okay, with that controlled, now let's start doing some bits and pieces logic here. So we're going to do game context dot. I know by now you'll be wondering how are we going to test how calculate score is working and all of that. Don't worry, in a few minutes we are going to be able to do that. So let's just keep doing what we are doing. So it's get game state equals game service dot game state dot ready. So if the game state is ready, we want to write it. We want to write some introduction here. Okay. So basically, what we want to do is we want to put some information around this place, right? So what we are putting there, that's not okay yet. So for our info box, let's say so we're going to say align items on set. On set. Let's do that. Okay, it's still aligning the items to center. So let's check why this is the case. So there's wrapper here, okay, which has aligned item to center. So we have to change the wrapper information. Okay, let's just move on. Let's move on for now. All right, so we're just trying to put some information here, all right, that will help the user know what they need to do. So P, we're going to put P here, and then we're going to say welcome, or we want to write when the game state is ready, we want to say welcome to line up heroes, line up heroes game. Welcome to the line up heroes game. We are glad to see you, or something. Anyway, it's not glad. Say drag, or want to say drag and drop. Drag and drop the heroes in the correct comics, in the correct comic list to get 12 points for each hero, right? So we're going to say sort them alphabetically, and quickly for better score. All right, that's just a simple information we want to put out there. So I think that should be what we have here. All right, welcome to lineup hero games, blah blah blah. All right, so let's copy this logic here and let's just paste it below it. And if game state is if it is also ready, right? If it is also ready, what we want to do is we want to do something very quickly here. Div class name, say time box. All right, so we're going to give that time box, and we're going to say P. Then for the P, we're going to render. We're going to say game context dot duration. All right, we're going to render the duration. That will be the time left. All right, and then we're going to put a span here. We're going to write time left. All right, so let's do some styling here very quickly. Let's do so we're going to say dot time box. We're going to say width is 100%. So time box P. Then we're going to say font size is 15 pixels, or say 17 pixels. Line height is like 60 pixels. Let's do 60 pixels for you. 60 pixels. Line height is like 62 pixels. Then we are going to be doing color, of course, is going to be black. Let's say margin 0. Right, then time box of span. So for span, I'm going to say font size is like 13 pixels. Color, let's find another color there. Right, so no line heights. And so for time box, we're going to say text align. Text align is center. All right. Now we're going to have something like this, and then we're going to do a little bit of padding 0.5 rem 0. All right, just to add some space here. All right, so this will show the it will show the time left and all of that. So we are supposed to do if game state is not equal to here. That's what we're supposed to do, because it's not supposed to show by default. It's not supposed to be visible by default. All right, now with that done, let's collapse the wrap box here, and then let's put a button. Let's style a button. Let's style a button here. Now, what we want to do is that first we want to show so let's do div class line. All right. So let's just style the line. Say dot line. That's going it's going to be width 100%, height 2 pixels, background color. So something like this. Let's make it more interesting color. All right, something around this. All right, I think we should have that. Let's make it the height 1 pixels instead. All right, I think that's okay. And then let's make the margin to be 1 rem and 0. All right, so let's do 2 rem. Okay, great. Now, so it adds some space there, which is fine. Now I want to show the score, the user score, right? So we're going to have time box here again after the line this time around, after the line, and just format here. So when the game state is done, right? When the game state is equal to done, what we want to do is want to show the score, right? So we're going to put game score here, game score. Then we're going to write total score here, right? So it is when the game state is done, right? If the game state is not done, basically if the game state is not done, you are not going to be seeing anything right there. All right, you won't see anything. Okay, so basically the last thing we want to do here is to add a button and add some sort of logic to that button that helps us kind of resets the game or starts the game, or something like that. All right, so we are going to be doing this as we're going to say div class control. So let's just call this control. All right, so we're going to say control width 100%. We're going to say display flex. We're going to say align item center. Then dot control the anchor tag. We're going to say padding, say outline none, box shadow none, say padding 0.67 rem, and then we're going to say 1 rem. Let's say text align. This is a button. We are styling our button, right? So maybe we should just do .ptn here. All right, text align is center. Color is white. Font size is about 14 pixels. Font weight is about 500 pixels. 500. Font weight is 500. All right, so let's put that there. Div class name btn. So we're going to say, so let's just put not div, sorry, let's put link instead. Okay, so we're going to do two, just two, but we have not imported link at the top, so let's do import react router DOM, then link. Okay, not that. Now that we have this, what we want to do next is to, why is it complaining? Cannot find the link. That's not it. Let's restart. It's not supposed to be complaining. All right, now that we have the button, let's look at what the button looks like. So we're going to say start game. So start the game, reload. That's not showing yet. So for the control, we're going to say background color. Let's start with this, but that's not where we're going. Let's choose something around this color right here. All right, so you can enter this value for background color. So you can see start game here. Let's say margin left is auto, and then let's say text decoration is none, right? And let's do border radius is 4 pixels. Okay, just to start, just to style our so let's do font weight is 700 to make it a little bit more bolder. Padding here, let's do 1.5 rem, so it will be longer, and then say 0.87, font size to be like 15 pixels. So I want it to be a little bit bigger. Okay, now we have a button here. Now what do we want to do? We want to write the logic that will actually make this button kind of work. All right, so we want to say what happens here. So if game context.gameState is equal to game service, not game score, game service dot game state dot done. When it's done, what do we want to put there? We want to say reset game instead of start game. So reset the game. Now we've put full column here. Now we want to test again. So I'm just going to kind of copy this, come here and say when it is playing, then what we want to do basically is to say end game. All right, now when it is not playing and it is not done, that means we are going to put start game here. All right, now with that done, if I reload, you see start game by default. Okay, one thing we want to do is also to control the function it will fire every time. Now remember that we already wrote a handle start function, right? So I'm just going to call handle start here. See, handle start e. All right, with this done, what is going to happen? Let's see what's going to happen. Let's see what this will result to. So let's close this. I'm going to start the game. You can see now playing. Now when I started the game, what happens? The bench was populated, the countdown began, right? And the text on the button shows end game. Now I'm literally not going to I'm not going to do anything. So I'm going to allow the countdown to be done, and then let's see if we are going to see our score. So the total score here is 0, right? Total score is 0, and then you can see that the text here is now reset game. If I reset game, everything here clears off, and then you see start game, and then I can start game again. As a matter of fact, I can decide to end the game, and I'll see my total score. I'll see the time left, I'll see the total score, right? And I can reset game. So everything is working. So the last thing I want to do is, for our wrapper in our custom.csx, for our wrapper, I'm going to say align items. I'm going to remove align item center here, right? So that this goes at the, to the top. Okay. Now let's see what is going to happen if I decide to play this game. So I'm going to start the game, and then I think Orc is here. I think it's Aquaman for DC, Iron Man, Black Widow for DC, Superman for DC, Batman for DC, I think Captain America, I think Wonder Woman for DC, Spider-Man here. I still have time left. Oh my God. So let's see what happens. I have 0 as the score. Now, as while we were working, I discovered that at the point where we were calculating the logic, we wrote the logic that's going to handle the dragging of an item from the bench right to the to either sides of the bench, either DC or Marvel, right? At that point, we were using a dangerous array function here, which is splice. At this point, this is going to be affecting state management in React, because we are using ContextAPI at this point. All right, there's going to be some ambiguity here. So instead of using splice for these start arrows here, we're going to be using filter, right? So start will be equals to start arrow filter. Now remember, what we want to do is to remove the arrow from the source, which is the branch, and add it to the end, which is the destination. All right, so we're going to filter out all arrows in the list of arrows on the bench, which where the ID of each of the arrow is not equal to the ID of the current arrow that is being dragged, right? So I'm dragging the first arrow. I'm going to look for all other arrows that does not actually that is not the same as the arrow I have dragged. So I'm going to remove all of those arrows and make it the remaining items on the bench, and then the one that is currently being dragged, I'll add it to the end. So that's why we are using filter here instead of splice. And this way, we're going to be able to work with our game right here. So if I start the game again, all right, if I start the game this time around, I'm going to see, I'm going to see how this countdown is going on. Then I can, drag Aquaman, and let's do Batman here. Let's do Captain America. Let's do Flash. Let's do Spider-Man, and I'll end the game. Now my score is 59. Now, where this game is interesting is that you can actually drag all to the correct column and then begin to sort them and order them, right, within the time frame, right? Remember, it's 30 seconds. All right. And as you play the game, you either get a lower score or a higher score, depending on depending on whichever way you play the game, or whatever way you arrange the arrows. All right. So basically, that's all about this part, and thank you for following through. I know we spent a lot of time here. We spent over 2 hours already, right? So basically, we are going to be continuing in the last part, which is the final part for this series, and we're going to just kind of run through all of the things we've done, and then recap on all of them, and we're going to explain some specific things, and we're going to end this short series. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next part.